Warning: some contents may be disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised. Okay, I, a female from a smallish town, bought a nicer ride, and now I always get weird randos approaching me. One rando guy comes up to me in a grocery store, says how much he likes my ride and etc., and all is well. I continue on, but then he stops me a second time to talk about my vehicle. Again, all is good, and I leave with no problem. The next day though, I head back to a different grocery store because I forgot some things. He's pulling up just as I walk in, and then he waves from his truck. I do my shopping, but I notice that he is walking around almost every aisle that me and my kid are in, but he's not looking or picking up anything. We take about 45 minutes with a full cart and then go to pay. The rando guy is suddenly right beside me at the other checkout and then says that he needs to show me something. He says that he took a picture of my ride last night just in case he saw me again. He then shows me, then randomly explains for a lengthy time that he always comes to this grocery store after work to pick up supper. But, after 45 minutes of following us around the store, he's only buying a can of soup. He did have a full cart the day before when we first met. He then tells me that he walked around my ride the other day at the store to get a closer look and then check out the fenders and details, and then he keeps gushing about how nice it is. 3 days later, I go to a completely different grocery store, and much later than the other times, and he's there again, pulling up just as we are leaving. I was only in for 5 minutes. He stops me again, talks about my car, he then walks into the store and I go on my way. But I discreetly watched this guy, and he walked out right after he went in with no purchases at all. A couple of days later, it happens again. It's a smallish town, but I've lived here for 5 years, and I have never seen anyone that many days in a row. His mannerism is not like, "Hey, fancy to meet you here again." It's more like, "Hi, I was waiting for you." It's super creepy, but is it just coincidental and I'm just overthinking it? I'm worried that when he was walking around my ride, he may have put something on my car that tracks it. He made quite an emphasis that he got a closer look to admire it, and each time that I saw him, he oddly explained why he was there. Like it wouldn't have been a normal thing to explain to a random person in a store. Also, how can you tell if someone put something on your car? Or am I just crazy? For clarity, I have 3 teenagers at home and I need groceries often, but I only saw Rando buy that one cart, and the 3 other times, he didn't purchase anything, despite being in a grocery store multiple times in 1 week. Also, I live rurally, so I'm not driving there all the time. I only go into town for groceries. I've had several creepy or unsettling encounters from guys before on the bus, but not another woman. And this really took the cake. This story is from a few years ago when I was working at a different job and I lived a few cities over. I took the hour-long bus ride on 2 separate buses every day to work, and yes, this is important to the story. I had gotten on the first bus as per usual, and I was sitting right near the front. More people got on the bus, and one woman in particular sat right next to me, while everyone else pretty much headed to the back of the bus. Now, I didn't mind, even though there were several other empty seats. I just kept reading my book on my phone. She quickly started up a friendly conversation, and I didn't think too much of it while we were conversing because she was just asking my name, how I was doing, and I asked in turn to be polite. She seemed like she had been having a bad week, if not a bad month. She started asking where I was heading and other questions like that. I told her that I was heading to work and that I took the bus every day. She asked a couple other mundane questions, and I asked some as well. It was a pretty nice bus interaction compared to my past experiences. Finally, though, we got to the bus terminal and started transferring buses, only to find out that we were getting on the same one again. She invited me to sit by her again until whoever stop came first. She started up conversation once we were situated in the bus and then asked much more personal questions. Now, I'm a pretty open person and I usually talk and talk forever, so I didn't think much of it. She asked my age, I was 20, and she told me hers was 30. She asked about my family and their names and ages and told me about hers as well. She said a lot of things that depicted a very rough family and a bad situation, and I feel a lot of empathy for her. And when she asked to stay in contact, I willingly gave her my number, and we sent each other a text to make sure that it worked, and then she got off the bus at her stop. A few minutes later, I realized that I didn't recognize my surroundings and that I had gotten on the wrong bus, but luckily it was still in the same city. So I got off and I biked the rest of the way to work and was only a minute late. I'm usually early. But then things got weird. After work, which was only a 6-hour shift, I find 2 missed calls and 12 messages, mostly asking why I was not answering and why I was ignoring her. I just responded with, "Oh, I'm sorry, I was working and I couldn't look at my phone," before answering her first question, and I just headed home. She then proceeded to text me constantly, almost hourly for the next 2 days. And by the 3rd day, things got weirder when she started calling me by a whole bunch of terms of endearment like sweetheart, babe, and honey. I asked politely for her to stop because it made me uncomfortable. She did for a day, but then she started again with more. And out of nowhere, she asked me not to block her before I had even contemplated it. I really should have, but I was just exhausted and I was not thinking straight from exams and work. Now, being extremely uncomfortable and confused, I went and talked to some family who I knew would give it to me straight and blunt on what I should do about the situation. They were horrified with how much information I had given this lady that was flirting with me, who was 10 years older than me. She knew the names of my family, the city I lived in, one of the buses that I used for transportation daily, my name, my number, and then where I worked. And by the end of that conversation, I was freaking out, but I also was trying to rationalize the situation. I'm a bit of a pushover, and I felt bad about even blocking her, even though I probably should have hours prior. Eventually, my father stepped in and ended up blocking her on my phone for me, so that I wouldn't feel as guilty about it. We then contacted my work, and they kindly transferred me buildings a couple months later. And I thankfully have not heard from her since. This is a story from when I was in 8th grade, or around that time. Honestly, I feel a bit stupid bringing it up here, but I have never told anyone, not family, not friends, and I just want to let it out somewhere. Up until high school, I usually went home with my friend, me walking and her trotting alongside on her bike. The walk home from school was in a relatively safe area. It was surrounded by other schools, supermarkets, churches, and little houses, so I never felt unsafe during that 10-minute walk. Not even on that one particular day when my friend had to ride ahead and I was left walking home alone. About halfway through my usual route, I suddenly had this unsettling feeling, like someone was watching me. I turned my head toward the street next to me, and I saw a car driving noticeably slower than it should have been. I actually looked it up on Google Maps out of curiosity, and the speed limit on that street was 30 kilometers per hour. But this car was moving so slowly that it looked like it was floating, like it was trying to match my pace. At first, I didn't think much of it. After all, as I mentioned, there were schools and even a kindergarten in the area. I just assumed that it was a parent looking for a parking spot to pick up their kid. But things started to feel a bit creepy when the driver's window rolled down and the man behind the wheel looked directly at me. My memory of that moment has grown a bit fuzzy over time, but what I remember clearly is a man with short dark hair and an unsettling wide smile. It's that smile that stuck in my memory the most. It didn't fade for a second. The situation was bizarre and I couldn't fully process what was happening. So I just turned my head and I looked straight ahead. But to my shock, he kept staring. That same horrifying twisted smile plastered across his face, and he continued creeping along next to me, not speeding up at all. It felt like an eternity, and I didn't know what to do. Everything about the situation felt so surreal. I looked around to see if maybe he was looking at someone else, or if anyone else noticed how creepy this was. But I remember people just walking by normally, as if nothing strange was happening. My only comfort was that people were around at all, because by that point, I was getting genuinely scared and still struggling to register what was happening. I even thought about calling out to some guy walking in front of me, but I was too shy to say anything. Out of curiosity and fear, I started walking even slower. I could have sworn that I saw a flicker of disappointment on his face before he finally drove away. It all felt like a nightmare. I felt relieved watching the car disappear down the road. But then, as I reached the crossroad that led to the street that I lived on, he appeared again. He was back, driving just as slowly, window down. That same grotesque, unnatural smile stretched across his face. At that point, I was so stunned that I froze for a moment and I looked directly at him. I was trying to convince myself this was really happening and not something that I was making up. Maybe he was someone I knew, a friend from my parents, an old teacher trying to say hello. But no, this was real. This man was practically twisting his entire upper body to look at me through the car window, and I didn't know him. That smile was still unbearably creepy, and I had no idea what he wanted. Even worse, I realized something. From the direction he was now coming from, he must have driven in a circle around the block just to appear again on the street that I was about to enter. The street where I lived, my home, was only a minute away. He was still driving well below 30 kilometers per hour, still saying nothing, still staring. As I stood there, trying to comprehend how real and dangerous this was, I felt a wave of fear wash over me. This creep could be trying to figure out where I lived. The street was lined with houses, but there wasn't a single other person around. Just him and me. All I wanted was for this nightmare to end. It was just the way he wasn't saying anything, just looking into my face, that scared the hell out of me. Thankfully, he never stopped the car completely. He just kept creeping along slowly. And eventually, he drove past far enough that I could finally cross the street. And at that point, I couldn't care about anything else. I told myself that if he came near me again, I would scream. I just ran straight home, and even while running, I could swear that he was still twisting his body to keep his eyes on me, still smiling that awful smile as he drove away. I was genuinely terrified, and this incident traumatized me. I knew that I hadn't imagined it. I kept checking, kept thinking about it over and over and over again. I was so scared that he would figure out where I lived that I refused to go to school or leave the house for days. I remained on edge for weeks, always half expecting him to show up again. I've thought about this moment so many times. Did he know me? Then why didn't he say anything? Why did he just smile like that? I even felt ashamed for wearing a skirt that day, thinking maybe it was just some creep lurking around. But no matter what, the whole situation was terrifying. And now I'm an adult, still living with my parents in the same place, though I have no reason to walk that old route anymore. I've never seen that man again, and I have never experienced anything as creepy or strange as that day. All that's been haunting me is his creepy smile, and how I will never quite understand how this horror movie story actually happened to me. I never told my parents or my friends, especially not my mom. She's always been very overprotective, and I knew that if I told her, she'd probably have started walking me to school again like I was a kindergartner. And my friends back then probably wouldn't have believed me anyway. So now that I've finally gotten this off my chest, creepy car guy, I'm glad that I never saw you again, and I hope that it stays that way. I genuinely hope that you never do this or something worse to any other kid, ever. Have you ever looked into the eyes of someone who is truly crazy? Not someone who just does off-the-wall things or acts different, but genuinely insane. I have, and it terrified me. Let me back up. I will be vague on many details for obvious reasons, but a backstory is absolutely necessary. I work for a large corporation, and I have a couple of different bosses, but the one that I formed a genuine friendship with is the one that we will call Jeff. Jeff is a very laid-back, go-with-the-flow type of guy with a great sense of humor. I also should explain that he is single with no children. Not long after I started working with the company, we became friends, and he often stops by my desk to chat. It was about a year ago that he stopped by one morning, and I immediately knew that he was not himself. He seemed distant and stressed, which is unusual for him. When I questioned what was wrong, he told me that he needed to speak with me about a situation. Of course, I was immediately concerned and I urged him to go on. He explained that a few years ago, long before I even started at the company, another woman began working at the company. She was not in our department, but did work within our company that required her to interact with leadership in our area, including Jeff. From this point on, we will call her Lauren. He explained his interactions with Lauren were not often at all, but she was polite and professional when they did need to speak. He said that she worked for the company for less than a year and then left as she announced that she was getting married and moving. And that was that. He did not encounter her again until a couple of weeks prior, when he received a friend request from her on social media. He explained that he didn't think much of it and accepted it, as he was Facebook friends with many colleagues both past and present. She then messaged him later on after accepting the request. He said that he chatted back with her initially as she seemed to just want to catch up. He learned that she had divorced and wanted to move back to our town. The conversation carried on as normal until she asked if he would join her for dinner when she came back to town to visit in a couple of days. And Jeff explained that he politely declined her offer, and at first, she took it well. But then, it all went downhill from there. He stopped responding shortly after declining the dinner invitation, and within a few hours, he received erratic and insulting messages from her. Everything from calling him a wimpy bitch to saying that she was the best thing that he could hope for, and he blew any chance with her now. He did let me read some of these messages myself right then. He honestly felt like these were drunk texts, but still bothered him, and then he blocked her. He figured that was the end of it. But how very wrong he was. She then began emailing both his personal and work email, pleading for another chance, saying that she was drunk and didn't mean it, saying that she needed to see him, and so on. I would get to read a lot of these myself when I would later be asked to print these off for him for evidence. The reason he was telling me about this that particular day was because he had received a message request from Lauren's sister saying that she needed to talk to him about Lauren and that it was urgent. He accepted and responded to who we will call Beth. Beth told him something that had snapped in Lauren when she went through her divorce, and she became fixated on a man that she called Jeff. Beth explained that she had tried to talk some sense into Lauren when everything fizzled out with the initial conversation with Jeff. But Lauren wasn't having it. Lauren told Beth that he was her soulmate and that she was going after him. All of this led to Beth explaining that Lauren had flown into our town and was staying at a hotel close to our company and was coming to see him at work. Jeff said that he had found out what Beth said to be true when he came in and found Lauren standing outside his office. She immediately ran to him when he saw him and then pulled him into an awkward hug. Jeff said that he smelled the alcohol on her and he immediately pulled away. She explained that she was here to get her old job back and needed to see him. She also brought him gifts that included gift cards, snacks, and a picture of herself. Jeff refused these gifts, but she became more forceful and insisted he keep them. Jeff got away from her shortly after saying that he had a meeting. He then went to HR to explain the situation and how he absolutely did not want her to be employed there again. He provided me with a copy of the picture she left for him and said that if I saw her anywhere around the company property, to notify security. Beth later sent Jeff a picture of Lauren dressed as a man that Lauren had sent to her, saying, "I'm wearing a disguise so I can watch him without him knowing it's me." Again, this was nearly a year ago. Things only escalated. Lauren made multiple trips back to our town, but would try to catch Jeff in the parking lot. He would find multiple letters on his vehicle from her. Sometimes they made no sense. She once left him 2 letters that said the exact same things, word for word, but one was in cursive and the other one was in print. Jeff blocked numerous email accounts only for her to make new ones, and she professed her love for him, begging him to want her. She stated that she made him her beneficiary if anything was to happen to her. She even sent emails that were clearly from her, but claimed to be other men that wanted her and needed him to release her so that she could love them instead. Again, I got to read all of this when we were printing for evidence. She eventually got his personal cell phone number somehow and began calling and texting him constantly. He would block the numbers, only for new ones to come through. This eventually ended up in court, and a protective order was granted. This did bring things to a halt for a while. Jeff was finally himself once this occurred, as he had become a shell of himself, and I really felt horrible for him. Well, that was until this week. On Monday morning, Jeff came by my desk and I could tell right away that he was not happy. And before I could say a word, he demanded to know who placed all those letters on his desk. I was confused as I had no clue what he was talking about. I said as much, and he explained that there was a thick stack of letters and handmade Valentine cards on his desk from Lauren. We later found out that they had been stuffed under his door, and the housekeeper found them scattered on his office floor when she went to clean it. She didn't know what they were, so she just picked them up and neatly placed them on his desk. This was as troubling as it was figuring out how she got in the building in the first place. And shortly after, Jeff returned to his office to finish up some things before taking the letters to the police station. I was working away at my desk when I received a call from Jeff. Upon answering, I heard an almost panicked Jeff saying, "She's here!" He explained that he got a knock at his office door and opened it to find her on the other side grinning at him. He said that he told her that he was calling the police and slammed the door in her face and locked it. He called the police and then called me to inform me that she had been there and the police were on the way. I foolishly assumed that she'd bailed after he told him that he was calling the cops. I got up from my desk and headed down the hall to Jeff's office to check on him and wait on the police with him. But I stopped dead in my tracks when I saw her. She was sitting on the floor outside of his office door, humming to herself. And then she slowly turned her head to look at me. I can't explain the knot that formed in my stomach as our eyes locked. She looked a lot like the picture Jeff had previously given me, but her eyes were different. They were dark. There wasn't that lively spark that you often see in people's eyes. It was like they were hollow, void of any normalcy. Her lips slightly twitched up to a smile, and she then slowly turned her head back towards Jeff's door, and she resumed humming. I booked it. I absolutely darted back to my desk, and thankfully, the police arrived shortly after. She didn't put up a fight. She calmly allowed them to arrest her, and then walked away willingly with them, still humming, and they informed us after. She is still in jail for violating the protective order. Jeff and myself are both still very shaken by the experience, and I will never forget that look or her eyes, staring into an abyss of true insanity. I am currently a 21-year-old female, and I have lived alone since I was 18. When I was around 18 or 19, I would often take walks to a park that wasn't too far from my apartment complex. At that time, I had a boyfriend, ex-boyfriend now, who was a couple of months older than me, but unfortunately, he was at work when I decided to go out for my walk. I should mention now that there is a bus stop at the left end of my street that wasn't too far from the park. I remember stopping at the end of the block, waiting for cars to let me pass. Then I, for some reason, looked over at the bus stop, and I saw a man staring me down. After noticing this, I really didn't care if the cars would let me pass or not, so I just walked into the road. I did almost get hit, but I just wanted to be far away from that guy. There was a high school that was probably 5 to 10 minutes away from the park, and I remember looking back at the school because it was a school that I was currently attending at that time. But then, I saw that man who was staring me down from the bus stop. He was following me. I started slightly panicking. I think I even texted my boyfriend about how I'm pretty sure that I was being followed. I kept looking back behind me and made sure that there was a good sizable distance between him and I. I knew that if I have slowed my pace down, something bad was going to happen. I eventually got to the park and I started getting really anxious. My reasons being, number one, the park entrance was down a hill and then split into two separate paths that you couldn't see into due to trees simply being in the way. Two, knowing that nobody would have been able to see what could have happened to me if I chose to go down one of the two paths. And three, I was off from work and school that day and it was 2 p.m., which typically meant that nobody was in the park around that time. As I started walking down the winded hill, I saw a woman with 2 kids and a dog. I remember the instant relief, and furthermore, the safety that I felt when seeing her. I even picked up my pace to get to her quicker because I was scared out of my mind. I still remember the exact conversation that I had with her to this day. "Hi, I know this may seem weird, but I live down the hill, and while I was crossing the intersection where the bus stop was at, I noticed him staring at me. He then started following me. Can you just act like you know me if this man comes down here?" And before she could even reply, I tilted my head up to the man. He was about to come down the hill. When I did that, I think he slightly panicked and then started walking away. She saw the seriousness of the situation and gathered her kids up into the stroller. I don't know what made him decide to do this next, but as she was trying to get things packed up, he at some point turned back around and was now coming down the hill. I told her that he was coming down, and the woman moved quicker than ever to get things packed up, and I even started helping. As he walked up to us, he immediately started trying to ask me questions. I can't remember what all he said, but I remember the woman was pretty much answering for me. I guess he tried to ask if we knew each other, which of course she lied by telling him that she did know me, and I was coming down to walk back with her. I do know, I backed her up with this claim, and I just wanted the guy to leave me, and now her alone too. He asked us a couple more questions, and eventually we excused ourselves and started our way back up the hill. I remember the woman I had met walked me all the way down to the intersection where the bus stop was across from, and she was clearly very scared for me due to the fact that the guy had eventually started following me and her back. I felt so bad for dragging her into that situation. I didn't know if he would try to follow me all the way back home if we broke off there, or if he would decide to aim new focus onto the woman who was just simply at the park playing with a kid she was babysitting. Before he could get close to us, I walked over to some construction workers whom were now working on the high school sign, and I explained the whole situation to them. I told them about we thought it was weird how the man who was initially just following me was now following me and the lady. I pleaded them to call the cops if he went past the bus stop or started following the lady. The construction workers happily agreed. Then the woman and I went on our own ways. I don't know what happened to that man. I don't know if he was arrested or not. However, an hour later, my ex-boyfriend had gotten home from work. We then went out to go run errands, and as we were driving up the hill, there were 4 police cars parked around the intersection where I told the construction workers to call the police if the man was still trying to follow me. I'm just glad the police were called, especially with the high school being so close. I couldn't forgive myself if he had tried to follow some poor high school kid that was just walking home. So, to the man who was wearing a red and blue puffer jacket, who decided to follow me to a place that I would go to that I consider peaceful, content, and safe, thank you for teaching me to be more aware of people. But let's not meet ever again. And here's the riddle for this video. Hey everyone, this is your creepy sister. Thank you so much for watching the video. I do hope you enjoyed it. Also, don't forget to leave a like and a comment. It really helps the channel out. A big shout out to both my channel members and Patreon members. Thank you so much for taking your support to the next level. You guys are great. And again, to everyone, stay scared because your fear feeds me.